Hi everyone, this is for anyone who was off the other day when we started modelling, and for anyone else who wants a refresher on it or if they found anything confusing. I'll try and explain myself a bit more here. So when we're modelling, the industry way of doing it is known as subdivision modelling, which basically means we take a simple object like a cube and we smooth it and work with curves and things like that. So basically what we do, this is just a normal cube with 6 sides. If I was to smooth it, if I go to mesh and smooth, there, and I change it to 2 divisions, we've now got something which more closely resembles a sphere. Now, you can do that and you can save it and then you come back to it, but unfortunately this will be baked into it then, you can't change it. So it's not really the way we do it with Maya. What we do instead, I'm just going to back up by pressing Z, is we've got 3 different keys we can use. So we press 1 to have it in normal mode, and we press 3 to preview it in smooth mode. And what's happened here is when it's smoothing it, it's basically going from this edge to this edge and trying to average the distance between it. This edge to this edge and trying to again make this arc that'll go through it. Now the good thing about doing it this way is when I just smoothed it before and you saw all the different divisions, this is doing the same thing, but you can turn it on and off. It's called a smooth preview. So you can save it, you can come back to it, and the good thing is, right, if I imagine, I could have made this sphere by smoothing this or by using this. If I need to make any adjustments to this, like let's say I wanted to, bulge the top out or something, I'd need to get the whole edge loop here and try and start moving it, and it's horrible. There's too much geometry there to work with efficiently. Now the good thing with this is if I press 2, it's going to give me a combination of 1 and 3. It's basically 3 with a 1 preview. I hope that makes sense. Now what I can do, I can go onto vertex for instance, grab this corner of it. If I pull that, if you can see the whole sphere follows it. So it's a way of, it's a bit like Adobe Illustrator when you're working with Bezier curves, in that you basically move these points and everything else follows it. It does get a lot more complex than this, but this is the sort of simplest way I know I can really show you how to use it. So I'll show you in industry how we would model a cube, right? Because what we need to do is these edges look very computerized. So we're going to make something that looks a little bit more subtle, a little bit more realistic. I'm going to take my knife tool, multi-cut, like that, click on it, if it'll allow me to, should do. Oh, I think I need to click on the object first, right, there we go. This you can cut shapes into. I would not do it like that until you know what you're doing. But what you can do with it is you hold down Control and it puts what you call an edge loop in. Now an edge loop is a loop that runs throughout the entire model and it subdivides it. You can put as many of these in as you want, and each time you drop one in it'll go right around the circumference of the model. So the way we control these surfaces, like to control curves for instance, is if I just show you this, I'll put an edge loop there, right? If I press 3 now, you see it's smoothed it, but it's kept the top a lot more sort of rigid. And the reason is, when this smooths now, it does an average of this to this, but then it does an average of that to that, which is a lot smaller. Therefore, it keeps that area really sharp. I could put one on the bottom, smooth that. Now I've got the sort of cylinder. I could put one here as well if I wanted to, smooth that, and you've got a B-day. With this tool, so all I'm doing is holding down Control and it gives you a preview. So if you go on a vertical line, it'll give you a horizontal edge loop, and vice versa. But if you want to do what they call fencing, and you can look this up on YouTube, when you fence an object, you're basically controlling with loops throughout the entire model, and you want to go around, and every single line of geometry needs to have a friend, one that side, one that side. So on this, what I've just done, So it's there, one friend, two friend. And you'll know if you've got it right because it'll make like a little cube in the corner. So this is all done. Now if I press smooth now, can you see what's happened? It's attempted to smooth, but it's been controlled in those areas. So you actually end up with something which looks a lot more realistic rather than like a rubbishy polygon box. Now I'll show you what happens. This is a little bit more advanced, but it's just something to think about. So this face, I'm going to put a different material on this just to show you what happens when it smooths. So I'm going to change the colour to like a nice bright green. Right, when I press 3, watch what happens. See that face? It's getting stretched down because basically Maya's trying to keep this shape all together and control it. Now if you were to put a picture on this, like when we get into UV mapping, you don't need to worry about it yet, but if you put a picture there and press 3, it would stretch and deform the picture. So what models tend to do is you'd usually put like maybe a halfway point. Now if you want to do an exact half cut, you put your mouse on there, you hold on control, this time you press down the mouse wheel because that's a button as well. So I can put it right here if I want, and if I press it, it'll jump to the center of those two things. See, so you can keep like subdividing down. So anyway, they typically put center points on, which helps a tiny bit, but then you put a sort of holding line here. So it's almost like a margin or something. So you just put a line like that, and it would reinforce them. Now if I smooth it now, can you see how little this has jumped? But that, that's nothing really to worry about at this stage. So let's move on. In fact, I might find you some models that I've done and show you how it works. Right, so there's another way of adding all these edges, and that's by using a bevel. So I'm going to right click, go to edge, I'm going to drag over the entire model, and it's going to select every single edge. I'm going to go Control and B for bevel, and it will bevel it. And all it's done is taken every single edge and split it into two. Well, first of all, it's too much, so I'm going to bring the fraction down, and I'm just clicking and dragging over this. It moves very quickly, so if you want to slow that down, hold down Control while you're doing that. And I think you can do Control and Shift. Yeah, Control and Shift slows it down a ton. So we can get to this stage, but at the moment we've only got 2 edge loops in. So if you change it to 2, now you've got the original line and 2 of its friends. And this is all quads in the corner. I'll show you why you need to keep in quads in 4-sided shapes in a little while. The only thing we'd change about this, well, I can smooth it now, and it does basically the same thing. The only thing we tend to do is, as a default, it's set to chamfer on. Now a chamfer, can you see this edge here? It's sort of trying to curve the edge. Right, it might look really nice, but the problem is, if I turn it off, can you see this corner jumps to where it's supposed to be? If we were to delete these edges, let's say we changed our mind about the model, this isn't in its original position anymore because it sort of pushes it in. So usually when we bevel, we just turn the chamfer off because it chamfers it anyway, really. I hope this makes sense. Might be a little bit too much, but we shall see. Right, okay, so there's a few things you need to be aware of when you're smoothing, and this is all to do with this subdivision modeling technique. So I've got my mouse is going a bit weird actually. I've got a cone here. I've just went into the poly modeling stuff and just grabbed a cone. I'm going to click on it, I'm going to press 3, and we can see, I'm just going to press F to focus on it. We can see when we orbit around it, can you see it's got lots of artifacts? It looks bumpy. Now the problems with that is because it's got triangles. That's a triangle, that is. These are triangles as well, but when we smooth it, there's no real problem with those. And the whole thing is, triangles do not deform well. They don't sort of blend well. Quads, on the other hand, are absolutely fine, but triangles are a no-no. And to get your head around this, it's all to do with how things subdivide. I'll take you into Photoshop, So this is some geometry, for instance. So on the right hand side, everything's in quads. And this is great because when we subdivide, we can divide it this way if we want to, or we can go this way if we want to. Right? There's an entrance point, E for entrance, and there's an exit point that it follows. Well, we've got one here. We enter through this side, we exit through this side. Okay, but if you've got a triangle, I'm just going to change colour because I can. What will happen is you'll go, okay, I want to split this, and we'll start, and the line will start coming through, and it'll get to here, and it'll go, I don't know whether to go this way or to go this way. So instead it just stops there. So when you're doing subdivision stuff, you want to try and avoid triangles. They don't smooth very well. They're not too bad on flat edges, but anything else I'd leave. The worst type you can use though is what you call an n-gon. And I'm going to go back to one of these actually. Let's see. Right, I'm going to get this little dude. I'm going to add some divisions to him. Okay, so an n-gon is anything with 5 or more sides. So I'm just going to delete this edge. Right, now we've got quads because they're all 4. This has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges. If I try and smooth that now, it starts to cause all types of havoc, and it won't allow an edge loop to go through it, or it shouldn't do. Well, this version, right, okay, so this version of Maya is actually trying to correct that for us. I can perhaps show you with a edge loop. If you just give me 1 second. Insert edge loop. Let's see what this one does. Oh, alright, okay, ignore it. But anyway, you cannot keep n-gons in your model. Basically what happens is it's like an impossible shape because everything needs a point to go to. So what can quite often What can quite often happen is you go to render and it could crash your renderer because it just doesn't like that type of shape, and especially if you're putting it in a game engine, it could wreak havoc with it. So n-gons are really frowned upon. So if you went for a job or showed university and it was full of n-gons, they're going to be going, right, well, you don't really know how to model. But we'll cover all this, it's no problem at all. Right, so I've shown you beveling. So you think, well, why not just use bevels all the time? But I'll show you when to use edge loops and when to use bevels. Right, so I've got this shape here. I'm going to smooth it. Looks all blobby, it looks like a vase or something like that. Let's say I want to try and keep this cube especially nice and sharp. Okay, so brilliant. We go in with our edge loops. Click, click, click. Make our little corner bit. Click on there. Just do the same here. Click that. Beautiful. So that should hold perfectly. And it does. We've got this nice sharp square and it sort of slowly tapers off. But if you see what we've ended up with, what's happened is these lines coming down here, they're following the flow of this object, and instead of having one here, we've got 2. So now it's pinching on that corner. So you might want that, but if it's like a vase or something, you probably won't. So it's all a matter of exactly what you're modelling. So with this one, in this case scenario, you probably bevel the whole thing. So I would go onto edges, I would select, let's see if I can select this like an edge loop. Yeah, so I've selected this bottom loop, and the way I did that is I clicked on here, held down shift, double click the next one, and it goes all the way around. So I've secured that, I've selected this one, this one. These ones aren't structural, so you don't need to bevel them. In fact, they'll just probably make a mess. Get these top ones, because this is all part of the structure as well. Okie dokie. Control and B to bevel it. Now remember, we need to bring the fraction in, because that's a bit too big. We need to set it to 2 segments, because at the moment, see, we've got a triangle, so the edge loops aren't going to pass through that. So we make sure everything's in quads by just doing 2 segments. it's just the way it divides. Take off the chamfer. In fact, I'm going to bring this fraction in even more so it's even tighter. So now, can you see when we smooth this, we've got a really nicely held object there, and there's no pinching or deformation on it. So you can clearly see the difference here. Now, like I said, sometimes you'll want to run an edge through a model, sometimes you'll want to redirect it into a circle. So this is all about learning topology and stuff like that. It's a lot more complicated than you first think, but it's doable. I can do it, so you lot can. What we've basically done there, if I take this face and I can extrude it inwards, I'll show you how to extrude and stuff. We've basically set up like a containment unit around it. Okay, so if you imagine the line now, if you follow it, it's going to go this way, it's going to turn down this way, it's going to turn down this way, and it's going to go in a loop. So basically what we've done, we've redirected edge flow. So if we smooth that, it moves into a circle. But you can get to the stage where you've got them going in all directions. But that's part of the whole thing to it. So I hope that's helped you a little bit. Go on YouTube if you want, because there's loads of stuff on 3D modelling. I thought I'd just show you this as an example. This is something we tend to do in the second year. We're doing face models and stuff. Looks a bit bitty and messed up and stuff, but this is the model as it is. Can you see I've put a glossy texture on it, so it's really unforgiving with all the topology. But if you look, and you can go around counting if you want, these are all in quads. Some of them are different shapes, you know, they appear different, but they're all four-sided shapes, which means if I want to smooth anything, I can add loops to my heart's content, and it's going to run all the way through the model. Now when I smooth it by pressing 3, there's a load of control over the smoothing. It's not the best model in the world, but it's not the worst. So that is an example of this sort of sub-D process. I can show you in 1 and in 3 and in 2 if you wanted, but I don't know why you would do. And just as a little bonus, I've done this turbine model because we tend to animate one in the second year. This is all in quads. Doesn't look like it, these look like triangles, but they're definitely not, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a way of reducing, so we're going from a large amount of shapes down to a very small amount. Same on the bottom. This looks like a triangle, but it's not if I go into edges. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's nice and tidy, and when we press 3, it smooths. Now obviously a lot less than that face. I've still got some nice sharp edges, but you see all the control we've got over this. We can mix hard and soft edges together. So if you imagine doing like a car or something, all blends in really nicely. And if you look at the amount of geometry we've got on here, if I wanted to change anything, for instance, if I wanted to, let's have a look, if I wanted to move this forward, see, I'm not having to make massive, great big changes throughout the model. So I hope you found that helpful. Yeah, goodbye.